Polacanthus. Polacanthus, deriving its name from the ancient Greek polys/pi omicron lambda sigma, many and akantha/kappa alpha nu theta alpha thorn or prickle, is an early armored, spiked, plant-eating ankylosaurian dinosaur from the early Cretaceous period of England. In the genus Polacanthus several species have been named, but only the type species Polacanthus foxii is today seen as valid. Polacanthus was a quadrupedal ornithischian or bird-hipped dinosaur. It lived 130 to 125 million years ago in what is now Western Europe. Polacanthus foxii was named after a find on the Isle of Wight in 1865. There are not many fossil remains of this creature, and some important anatomical features, such as its skull, are poorly known. Early depictions often gave it a very generic head, as it was only known from the rear half of the creature. It grew to about 5 meters, 16 feet, long. Its body was covered with armor plates and spikes. It possibly was a basal member of the Nodosauridea. Description: Polacanthus was a medium-sized ankylosaur. In 2010, Gregory S. Paul estimated its length at 5 meters, 16 feet, its weight at 2 tons, 2.2 short tons. Thomas Holtz gave a lower estimation of 4 meters, 13 feet, and 227 to 454 kilograms, 500 to 1.000 pounds, in 2012. Its hindlimbs are relatively long for an ankylosaur, with a right femur length of 555 mm with the holotype. In 2011, Barrett et al. Indicated 2 possible unique traits: autapomorphies. The floor of the neural canal is deeply cut by a groove with a V-shaped transverse profile. The caudal spikes have triangular bases inside view and narrow points. In 2020, a study concluded to a single autapomorphy. The ischiae had half-length curve towards each other, their rear ends touching at their inner sides. The subsequent describers have always dedicated much effort at restoring the armor configuration. Hulk understood that Polacanthus had a large pelvic shield or sacral shield, a single fused sheet of dermal bone over its hips, sacral area, which perhaps was not attached to the underlying bone and decorated with tubercles. This feature is shared with other polacanthine, basal nodosaurids, dinosaurs such as Gastonia and Mimerpelta. With the holotype, this shield is 108 centimeters wide and 90 centimeters long. It features 4 horizontal rows of larger keeled osteoderms per side, surrounded by smaller ossicles. These latter are sometimes completely fused to form flat armor plates. Hulk thought that on the tail there were 2 rows of keeled osteoderms per side. Of a set of spikes found with the fossil, he assumed they had adorned the sides of the rump. A different arrangement was hypothesized by Nugget. He thought that both the tail and the front of the body, including the neck, featured 2 parallel rows of spikes, 1 per side. On the front body each row would have consisted of 5 spikes, and he claimed that 7 of these had been conserved with the fossil, 5 of the right side and 2 of the left. The tail rows would have consisted of 22 shorter pairs, 15 spikes being still extant, 8 of the left side and 7 of the right. As the spikes are asymmetrical, their position can more or less be deduced. Blows in 1987 basically agreed with Nopxa, but also distinguished 3 spike types, a type A, B and C, allowing him to classify additional fossil finds, which often differed from the holotype spikes in several details. In 2013 a footprint was found by Henley Hobbs and his father on the Isle of Wight. Now a picture of the footprint is inside the dinosaur farm. History of study. Discovery. Polacanthus foxii was discovered by the Reverend William Fox on the Isle of Wight in early 1865, at Barnes High at the southwest coast. Fox had first planned to have his friend Alfred Tennyson name the new dinosaur during a meeting on July 23, 1865, when the remains were shown to paleontologist Richard Owen. Tennyson proposed Acanthus vexinus, but this name was ultimately rejected. In September 1865, Fox in a lecture to the British Association reported on the find and let it be named Polacanthus foxii by Owen, hereby perhaps circumventing the convention that an author does not name a taxon after himself. The text of the lecture, only published in 1866, was more or less reproduced by him in anonymous articles in the Geological Magazine and the Illustrated London News of September 16, 1865. This procedure caused some confusion, as no corresponding 1865 publication by Owen exists. Some have therefore contended that Thomas Huxley in 1867 became the author of the name. Others give Fox, Owen or Anonymous as the author. The generic name is derived from Greek pi omicron lambda sigma, polys, many and kappa alpha nu theta alpha, akantha, thorn, in reference to the many spikes of the armor. The specific name honors Fox. The holotype, BMNHR 175, was found in a layer of the Upper Wessex Formation dating from the Barremian. It is an incomplete skeleton with the head, neck, anterior armor and 4 limbs missing but including dorsal vertebrae, a sacral rod of 5 dorsosacrals, the sacrum, most of the pelvis, most of the left hind leg, the right thigh bone, 22 tail vertebrae, ribs, chevrons, ossified tendons, a pelvic shield, 22 spikes and numerous ossicles. The skeleton was in 1881 studied by John Whitaker Hulk, while it was still in the possession of Fox. Hulk published the first detailed description of the find, noting that the specimen had badly deteriorated over the years, the dermal armor having almost fully fallen apart. The same year Fox died, his collection was acquired by the British Museum of Natural History, including the Polacanthus fossil. This was after arrival in the museum in 1882, reassembled by preparator Caleb Barlow, painstakingly putting all the pieces together with Canada balsam, much to the wonder of Hulk, who in 1881 had called this a hopeless undertaking. This allowed Hulk to re-describe the specimen in 1887, with a special attention to the armor arrangement. In 1905, when it was mounted by the museum, the specimen was again described by Franz Nopcsa, who for the first time provided an illustration of the possible spike configuration. Later, the specimen was stored in the museum basement. Additional specimens. Numerous other specimens from Wyatt and Great Britain have since been referred to Polacanthus. These mostly consist of single bones or armor elements. Several specimens that were discovered prior to the holotype were at various points considered to belong to Polacanthus. In 1843 John Edward Lee reported the discovery on Wyatt of 3 such specimens, consisting only of armor pieces. They were already lost before the description was published. In 1859, geologist Ernest P. Wilkins mentioned the presence in his collection of numerous scutes, spikes and vertebrae from Wyatt, referred by him to Hylaeosaurus. After his death, his collection was moved several times and the pieces were lost. A second partial skeleton, from which parts had been removed since 1876, was identified and fully excavated by Dr. William T. Blowes in 1979. It is also in the London Natural History Museum as specimen Makar 9293. It is the first specimen to show skull elements, neck vertebrae and unequivocal anterior armor. More contentious are finds from mainland England. In 2014 a partial skeleton was reported from Bexhill in Sussex, specimen Bigsum 1999.34.1 to 2011.23.1 discovered in the early summer of 1998 by David Brockhurst in the Ashdown Pevensey quarry. This dates from the Valanginian. In 1999, 2007 and 2011, remains from Spain were referred to Polacanthus. A 2020 review of British ankylosaurian fossils concluded that none of these additional specimens could be confidently referred to Polacanthus, which would therefore be represented only by the holotype. Classification. Species. Polacanthus is known definitively only from its holotype specimen, representing the species P. foxii. However, numerous other species have been erroneously assigned to the genus Polacanthus in the past. In 1924, Edwin Hennig named a Polacanthus beckleyi, the specific name honoring collector Samuel Beckles, based on specimen BMNHR 1926, a piece of an ilium associated with armor plates, found on Wyatt in the 19th century. Today this is often considered a junior synonym of P. foxii. It was assumed to be a different species because the armor is smoother on top, but this was likely caused by water erosion of the fossil. In 1987, William T. Blowes claimed that the American Hoplitosaurus was a species of Polacanthus, renaming it into Polacanthus marshi. Though this gained some popularity in the early 1990s, today the identity is generally rejected. In 1996, a Polacanthus rudgwickensis was named by Blowes, after a review of some fossil material found in 1985 and thought to have been iguanodon, which was on display at the Horsham Museum in Sussex. The material, holotype Horsham 1988.1546, is fragmentary and includes several incomplete vertebrae, a partial scapulocoracoid, the distal end of a humerus, a nearly complete right tibia, rib fragments, and 2 osteoderms. P. rudgwickensis seems to have been about 30% longer than type species P. foxii and differs from it in numerous characters of the vertebrae and dermal armor. It is named after the village of Rudgwick in West Sussex and was discovered at a Rudgwick Brickworks Company quarry, at the quarry floor in grey-green marl beds of the Wessex Formation. Baramian age, approximately 124 to 132 million years ago. In 2015, Blowes made it a separate genus Horshamosaurus. In 1971, Polacanthus foxii was by Walter Coombs renamed into Hylaeosaurus foxi. This has found no acceptance, and the name is an invalid nomen ex dissertatione. Also, it has been suggested that Polacanthus would be simply identical to Hylaeosaurus armatus. This was rejected by Blows in 1987, because of differences in age and anatomy. A possible identity is hard to prove or disprove as there are few overlapping elements in their holotypes. In 1928, NASA named a new genus and species Polacanthoides ponderosus, based on a number of syntypes, BMNH 2584, a left scapula found at Bolney which in 1841 by Gideon Mantell had been referred to Hylaeosaurus, and BMNH R1106 and 1107, a tibia and humerus. The new taxon has proven to be very problematic. Contrary to what NASA assumed, the tibia and humerus were not found at Bolney but on White. This makes Polacanthoides a possible chimera, especially since their provenance from White makes it likely they belong to Polacanthus. Furthermore, the White specimens are not the original bones, which have been lost, but casts which at best could have been used as plastotypes. The scapula belongs to an indeterminate thyreophorine. In 1982, Justin Dallaire named a genus Vectensia, without providing a specific name, based on specimen GH 981.45, an armor plate. Like the holotype of Polacanthus, it was found at Barnes High, but reportedly in an older layer, of the Lower Wessex Formation. Blows in 1987 tentatively referred it to Polacanthus. Relationships. Fox in 1865 assigned Polacanthus to the Dinosauria, Huxley in 1870 and Hulk in 1881 assigned it to the Solidosauridae. Its exact affinities were not well understood, until Coombs in 1978 placed in the Nodosauridae within a larger Ankylosauria. In 1996, Kenneth Carpenter EA refined this to the Polacanthini. An alternative hypothesis, first suggested by Tracy Lee Ford in 2000, is that there existed a clade Polacanthidae below the Nodosauridae plus Ankylosauridae node. A more conventional analysis from 2012, in which Polacanthus foxii and P. rudgwickensis were not recovered as sister species, is shown by this cladogram.